Hey everybody, welcome to What the Flick. I'm Matt Atchity, that's Alonso Duralde. We are gonna talk about some recommended DVDs this week. Some new stuff on the home video calendar, some stuff that we've probably covered before, but if you missed them in the theaters, some recommendations we have. Now there's a bunch of stuff out this week hitting the home theater market. I did want to mention Valerian, but I thought, no, you know what? You need to wait till that's on a big screen or sit really, really close. So
yeah, that is a movie that if you're going to see it at all, you really got to take it all in.
So my recommendation is Atomic Blonde, which is directed by one of the guys who had co-directed John Wick. It's set in the 80s. It's Charlize Theron, basically similar to what you saw her do in Mad Max Fury Road. She pretty much kicks everyone's ass.
Only in couture.
Yeah, right. I loved this movie. I think it's really fun. I think I gave it about an 8 or so. I'm sure somebody will correct me later. But it was a really good movie. Now, there's a problematic producer there.
Yes, definitely one of the, we've been talking about the sort of ongoing Hollywood story of powerful men being accused of harassment or assault. And one of the producers on this film, I think now 3 women have come forward to talk about sexual assault.
And so for what it's worth, Charlize Theron, you have my permission or anyone else's here or just your own, kick that dude's ass, please.
I didn't love Atomic Blonde as much as you did. I wanted to, certainly, and I think there are some individual segments in it that are really great. Overall, I don't know that it holds up as strongly as something like John Wick, but it's a good movie where, if you're gonna watch it at home and sort of fast forward through some of the stodgier bits and just get to the fight parts. The fight parts are great.
There's not stodgy bits in that movie.
Yeah.
All right, so speaking of stodgy movies, what do you recommend?
It is not, there's nothing stodgy about this, but it is a new documentary, one of the best documentaries of 2017, which if you missed, it's now coming out on DVD and you should check it out. It's called Whose Streets? And it is about Ferguson, Missouri, and what happened after the police killing of Michael Brown. And it's a very sort of ground level look at the protests that began and the conflicts with the police there, and it asks a lot of really, I think, hard questions about where we are as a society and how do we treat each other, how do we cover the destruction of life versus the destruction of property when news organizations are covering protests and riots. And it's about, you get to know these characters over the course of the film who become activists and they are politicized by these events, and they feel like they have no choice but to sort of devote themselves to fighting against inequality. And I think so often we see in the best political documentaries this notion of people who we're just regular folks who never had any plans to become political activists, but the times and the circumstances give them no other choice.
Right, it's the phrase "greatness is thrust upon some people," right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and unfortunately that's a topic, that's a subject matter in this country and in the world, but especially in this country, that's not going to go away anytime soon.
No, absolutely. So I think this is part of an ongoing conversation. What's also exciting about the film is that there's so much. There's a lot of cell phone footage, because you're really just kind of getting these multiple perspectives of people who are just out there on the streets. Nobody knew there was going to be a documentary when they started doing this, and so it really adds an immediacy and a kind of fly on the wall intensity to the movie.
I'm glad you brought that up because I think that's one of the things that especially what I feel like is an older generation, and I'm specifically talking about my mother, who will talk about things like they'll see the coverage, right, and the coverage and what feels like an uptick, at least in coverage, of more and more shootings, similar to what we saw in Ferguson. And there's a sense from some people like either it's gotten worse or we're so divided. And I always say to people like my mother or whoever else, saying, look, we are still seeing the sociological effects in this country of what it's like with everybody in this country walking around with an internet-capable video recorder, right? And that's a huge, huge change, and I think that it's only within the last 5 or 6 years that we've really started to understand how that's going to make a difference in our perception of the world, because there's a lot of people, there's plenty of people who will say, look, this stuff's been happening all along, you guys are just now seeing it.
Right, and the movie also, I think, has a lot to say about how social media has really changed the nature of protests, and the idea that you don't just have to get the sort of mainstream media version of this stuff. You can follow people on Twitter, you can go to their Facebook or their Instagram and get these very sort of direct and immediate responses about things. And it's been happening globally. I mean, you look at the Arab Spring and all these different protests in other countries, Twitter has changed the face of the game.
Right, and that's really that in combination with the internet capable camera, right? Because it was a point that if your local news didn't go out and cover something, there were so few media outlets and the gatekeepers, if they weren't invested in covering something, you didn't hear about it. And now you can hear about anything, anytime, and there's the video and not just video, like 4K video, like really high quality video, right? Because the cameras keep getting better and better, and the capabilities are such that we're gonna end up in this world where everything's news pretty soon. So, all right, well that's it for this week. We're going to come back next week with some more DVD recommendations. Hope you guys like the ones we recommend. Atomic Blonde and Whose Streets. So check them out, thank you.